What is up, everybody? It's the Inhuman one here, and today we're going to be talking about crafting in Path of Exile 2. Now, this guide's going to be geared a little bit more towards the beginners or newcomers to the series, and that way they can understand the basics of crafting, as it is referred to in the community, and how to level the best gear possible. So this will help increase your damage per second, your DPS, overall damage output, and just make your overall enjoyment and experience so much better. So the first thing we're going to be talking about is item rarity. You might notice that when you're picking up items, you're going to see the titles in different colors. The first rarity would be normal, which is going to be a white or gray item. So as you can see here, it just has an item. It has its title, it has the damage, and it has, of course, any other specifics particular to this type of weapon, which is a quarterstaff. This is going to be used primarily with monks, right? Again, all weapon types are going to have the same 4 rarities that you can see, and we're going to be going over those throughout this video. So first and foremost, you have the normal rarity, and you can see that there are no additional buffs. It just says, hey, this is what the damage does, and that's it. Well, a magic item is a blue rarity item, and magic items are going to have 2 modifiers, or at least up to 2 modifiers. And these modifiers for this particular example is going to be 89% increased elemental damage. That's not bad. And then 29% increased stun duration. Also just as another nice effect. You can see it says quarterstaff of the concussion. The suffix of the item title is typically going to say what kind of stat it's going to have or attribute that's going to be like specific to that type. But anyways, besides that, now you have the third rarity, which is going to be rare or yellow items. These rare items can have up to 6 modifiers. So you can see here, this one only has 5 modifiers, so it could have up to 6. And in some instances, they can even have 7 and kind of more obscure instances. But in either case, you know that you now have 3 rarity of items. You have the normal items, you have magic items, and you have rare items. You also have another tier of items, and those are referred to as uniques. Now, these are going to be like orange or, you know, whatever this color, and they're going to have like a very low kind of base rating, but they're going to have something unique to them that might give you like a nice buff. Like, for example, this gives you some invasion rating, which is nice, a little bit of dexterity and improved attributes, and then some defense, right? All kind of relatively decent low numbers, but then you get 0 to 40% increased movement speed when you're hit. So that's kind of the focus on uniques. They usually have something kind of reduced stats in lieu of something really rare or special that could happen. So in either case, item rarity is going to be broken into this kind of these 3 categories for the most part, at least in terms of crafting. Now, as we've discussed, you know, if you're actually going to be crafting items, we'll pull some of these just for the sake of our example. This one would be a good example here. What we can do is, if you have a currency tab, you can certainly use that. If not, you can always work within your inventory as well. But what you want to do is, what you can do is, any item is viable, and it's just a matter of hopefully getting a good roll. So in one, as it pertains to like Path of Exile 2, when you upgrade an item, that's called crafting, right? So when you're upgrading an item from like maybe one particular rarity to the next and trying to add modifiers, that is considered crafting. So what you can do is you can actually use your currency that you've been collecting throughout the levels to be able to improve your gear. So for example, because the randomness and almost like the it's almost like a gambling type when it comes to the attributes and modifiers that you can get, that kind of system, there's going to be a lot of opportunity to try and try again. So let's just say, for example, that we said, oh, you know what, I have a quarterstaff, I would use a quarterstaff, I'm using a monk right now, I'd like to improve this particular one because I happen to dislike this weapon, right? So what you could do is, there's several things you can do actually. So you could first use an Orb of Transmutation, and this would make a normal item a magic item with 1 modifier. So in this instance, we have a normal weapon. We could upgrade it to magic with 1 modifier. It would not have the 2, but we could get to that point as we continue crafting and upgrading it. Now, you could also opt for an Orb of Alchemy, and you could upgrade a normal item straight to a rare item with 4 modifiers. So you're skipping the magic step and you're adding 4 modifiers from the get-go. That is an option you could do as well. These orbs are a little bit more rare, so of course, you know, you're going to be it's up to you if you want to really do it. Another thing you could do from a normal item would be to use an Orb of Chance. These are incredibly rare, and what these do is these can unpredictably either upgrade a normal item to unique rarity or destroy it. So essentially, if you have a white base item like this, a normal item, you could apply an Orb of Chance and potentially get the unique variant of that particular weapon. So that is really hard to do. It's pretty rare, and honestly, I've only ever tried it once, and I was able to obtain this particular item here, which is an amazing attribute, or it adds great boons to this particular monk build that I was using. So you take a normal item. So in this instance, I used a normal topaz ring, and I applied a Chance Orb to it, and I got a Call of the Brotherhood topaz ring, which was a unique variant of that ring. So a very low chance of that happening, but it is possible. So in my 286 hours of playing this game, I've obtained 4 Orbs of Chance. So they're pretty hard to come by, especially if you're not trading for them and doing that whole currency thing on the trading site and what have you. But anyway, so let's just say, for example, that we're going to go ahead and apply our Orb of Transmutation, and now we have a magic quality item. So now the normal staff has improved to a magic quality, and it has a modifier that says gain 4 mana per enemy killed. So it's like, okay, we could work with that, let's just say, right? Let's say now that we have a magic item, and this is something that we're actually really excited about. Well, we could actually go ahead and add a Orb of Augmentation to it, and this would make a magic item, which is a blue item, it's going to add a new modifier. So what you could do is you can go ahead and add this, and you can add the modifier. Now our magic item is capped out at the 2 modifiers that a magic item can have. So now we have 82% increased physical damage. That's not bad. That's looking good. 86 to 180, that's not bad at all. So you're like, okay, this is great. I like what we're working with. Let's go ahead and continue upgrading it, because you're just really excited about this particular weapon. You like it. You like the stats you're getting. What you could do is you could use a Regal Orb, and this would upgrade a magic item to a rare item and add 1 modifier. So we're going to go ahead and use that. And so now our magic item is going to become a rare item, and it has 1 modifier. So the funny thing is, it actually added 2 modifiers for us. It gave us 4 mana per enemy killed. Actually, no, it gave us 19 accuracy and 5% increased light radius. Sometimes when you're upgrading and crafting, you get a free modifier, so it's not bad. But remember that I said you can actually have up to 6 modifiers. If I was like, heck yeah, this weapon is looking fantastic, the stats are amazing, what you could do next is you could go and use an Exalted Orb, apply that orb to your new rare quality weapon, and you would then add a 5th modifier. You could then do it again for the maximum of 6 modifiers on the particular rare weapon. So that is something you could do if you're just really happy with that. That's something to consider, and also just kind of a good idea, a good kind of plan of, you try it from scratch, and a base item with absolutely no modifiers can sometimes give you really good combinations and really great results. You could do the same, for example, if you're like, you know what, I really found this great magic weapon, but it's just not as powerful as I need it to be. Let's see if we can add rare quality and add some additional modifiers. And you could do the same exact process through here, right? A lot of times you want to do is you want to work with existing high quality items so you don't burn through as many resources or your currency, but you can certainly start from scratch. That's why I say any item is viable, even a white item, so a white level or normal rarity item is perfectly fine and viable. So that's kind of the basics of that augmentation. Now, if you're or crafting, so if you're going a different route, let's say that now we have this rare item, the same one we were crafting, and we're like, you know what, I don't really like the modifier with increased light radius because it doesn't really suit me well. So what you could hope for is if you'd use a Chaos Orb and potentially remove that modifier and change it with another. Now here's the thing though, the Chaos Orb, as its name implies, is indeed random. So it isn't going to necessarily pick out the least powerful modifier or anything like that. It's going to be completely random. So it could potentially remove, for example, in this instance, the 82% increased physical damage. And that would be unfortunate. That would really suck. So you wouldn't want that to happen, right? So obviously you need to keep that in consideration when you're using these orbs. There's a lot of chance involved. Another thing you could also look at is using a Vaal Orb to corrupt an item, but corruption is going to be a separate video because it's quite complicated and you can corrupt more things than you could imagine. So we're going to be going into that in its own guide. But essentially corrupting it is just another kind of chaotic, unpredictable modifier that could potentially have no results and prevent you from updating it any further, or it could have some crazy results or semi-negative results depending on what you roll. So as we talked about, the Exalted Orbs augment a rare item and they just add a modifier to it up to 6. The Divine Orb, if you look at all of the numbers like the 82%, 19, the 4 mana, and the 5% increased light radius, that Divine Orb is actually something that can change it, and it's based off of a kind of a new tier of numbers. So it can be X% to Y%, and from in that range it can then modify the numbers to increase them, typically in your favor. The Orb of Annulment would be an item that again would just remove a random modifier, but it would not replace it like the Chaos Orb does, so not as valuable in my opinion. And then of course the Orb of Chance, which we talked about, can update a normal item to a unique item potentially, but the chance is relatively low. So the other point of this is, let's say for example we say, you know what, I'm going to run with this weapon, I love the stats, it looks perfect, but you know what, I need a little bit more power out of it. In fact, I think I need more physical damage. What you could do is you could go ahead and use an Artificer's Orb. An Artificer's Orb is a way to create a rune socket, and a rune socket then allows you to insert sockets that have the innate buffs or, you know, improved quality of stats. So I'll show you kind of what that does. So for example, if you apply a particular you can use an Artificer's Orb to apply a socket, and on a weapon you can actually do it up to 2 times. So you could, if you wanted to, apply a second Artificer's Orb and create another hole. And then what you could do is you could go to your runes here and you could say, you know what, I think this would go really great with some physical damage. So if you look at your different runes, each of them are going to have a stat or an effect if they're slotted into a weapon or if they're slotted into armor or gear, for example. So if I go to this particular iron rune here, it's going to increase the physical damage by 20%. Okay, so I like that. Sounds good. So what I can do, and for whatever reason, I have to always move it out of my stash. It ends up kind of acting kind of funny, but we know that it has an open rune slot. And just note that when you insert runes into sockets, that is a permanent maneuver. You cannot undo it. So it's a permanent action, cannot be undone. So if you ever place a rune into a socket, it's permanent. So make sure that you're content with what you've got and you're willing to make that decision and weigh your options, weigh the pros and cons of each of the runes and their stats. So in this instance, I think physical damage would only further enhance the quality of this weapon. So now I'm like, wow, look at this. We've got our increased damage just by slotting in that rune, and it's increased by 20%, just like it said in the tooltip on the iron rune. So you could say, you know what, I want it to be more powerful, and you could go back, you could use an Artificer's Orb to create a new socket and then add another rune if you wanted to, and it'd be even stronger. So that is something that you could obviously consider doing, and something that I strongly suggest doing on some of your most powerful weapons. Like for this one, for example, you know, this particular weapon probably might hit a little harder than this one, but this one happens to have some pretty good elemental bonuses that are allowing me to deal even more damage. Now, we've talked about the item rarities, we've talked about modifiers associated with each of those item rarities, and we've talked about the different currencies that you can use to craft or level your weapons and items. The other thing we can talk about that we've not yet spoken about is the quality of items. So as you can tell, this started off as a superior quarterstaff, right? If you ever see the prefix superior, that means that it has increased quality. Quality of items is just going to increase the base stat of that particular weapon, and quality can be and go as high as 20%. So quality can be anywhere from pretty much anywhere from 5% to 20. And it doesn't necessarily go 5, 10, 15, 20, but it is, you know, different increments of the number. So anyways, within that value, you can then increase your quality by 20%. So let's say, for example, that we said this is a great weapon. I think I am going to increase it. You can use a blacksmith's whetstone to improve the quality of a weapon. If you had a piece of armor that you wanted to increase the quality of, you would use your armorer's scrap. That would increase the quality of an armor to up to 20%, same as before. If you had a wand, a staff, or even a scepter, you can use the arcanist etcher to increase the quality up to 20%. So all of the different types of weapons and I guess staves or whatever, they all have their corresponding currency that increases their quality. Funny thing, just a little bonus tip is just so you know, there's also ways to improve the quality of flasks and gems, but we'll be going over those in separate videos. So anyways, let's say for example that we say, hey, we love this weapon. I think we're going to go ahead and improve the quality of it so we can say we're going to use it. And now the quality will go up from 5% to 6%. And then it would continue increasing every time we applied it. And as you can tell, that already increased it from the previous, I think it was 190 to now the 201 damage. So the physical damage on this particular weapon that started off being pretty relatively worthless is now actually rivaling the weapon that I use as my main, which is the 230 attack damage. And we haven't even slotted in a second Iron Rune yet to increase the damage or physical damage by 20 more percent. And we haven't even started improving the quality yet, which could go up to 20%. So just imagine the potential just for that particular weapon. Obviously this has certain things that aren't necessarily desirable that we could try and re-roll, but ultimately the weapon that I have may be better for my particular build because of the elemental bonuses. But if I could get those on this staff by re-rolling, using the Chaos Orbs, using Exalted Orbs to see what other 2 bonuses we could get, we could potentially roll a very powerful weapon and create and craft a very powerful weapon. So quality is also very important. And once you're happy with the weapon and you're going to be using it for a while, I strongly suggest you increase the quality and improve it up to 20% so it can be maxed out and very powerful. Then, whenever you're ready, you can sell it in your stash if you'd like, or trade it down the road so you can, or just keep it for nostalgia's sake like I do. Another quick tip that I forgot to mention is that if, for example, if you're running out of Regal Orbs, or if you're running out of different things like Artificer's Orbs, or if you're running out of armor scraps or whetstones, what you can do is you can actually create these, and the way to do that is by salvaging them. So early on in Act 1, you'll get the salvage bench, and you may or may not understand it, but the most use you're going to get out of it is simply by breaking down things like this, for example. We're going to go ahead and grab some example items. So in order to get Artificer's Shards, which can then be used to make Artificer's Orbs, which can used to be socket items, you want to use these items here so you can pick these up. So even if, say for example, like I'll never wear that, but it has 2 sockets, that's great because that's potential for us to use. In this instance, we then have an item that has quality. Remember, if it says superior anything, there's a quality number associated with it. So an item with improved quality is going to give us its respective shard type as well. So here we go. If we wanted to salvage this, we then get Artificer Shards. And remember, if you craft these and if you collect 10 shards, you can make an Artificer's Orb, and then you can create sockets. So those do add up over time. And then here, if we were to salvage the superior G-Lid staff, we would then get an Arcanist Etcher, which is specific to the staff kind of weapon class. If we were to break this down, because it has quality, which we just spent all that time making, we would then have the Blacksmith's Whetstone, which improves the quality of a weapon. So remember, you have different ways to make these types of weapons. If for whatever reason then you say, you know what, I'm running low on Regal Orbs, I can't make magic items rare anymore, you can go to your kind of magic merchant, if you will, the one that's going to sell the wands and staves and all that, and you go to disenchant. And if you disenchant a rare item, you'll get a Regal Shard. Regal Shards will allow you to then, if you collect 10, you can craft a Regal Orb, which those orbs are the ones that are used to then make a magic item rare quality. When it comes to blue or magic items, if you disenchant those, you can get Transmutation Shards. Transmutation Shards then, when you stack 10, create an Orb of Transmutation so you can make a rare or a white rarity item or a normal item, a blue magic item. So that's how you get your currencies. It's a really nice way to do it. Honestly, that's why a lot of times, at least when I'm going through, I'm going to be actually picking up a lot of the items, and that way I can ensure that I have a good steady supply of this currency so I can continuously go through and try and reroll and craft the ultimate weapon. So that's just one of the last tips, is that you can also do the same thing, the same crafting here. You can actually applies to everything, even as something as simple as a waystone. So a waystone is considered an item that can be crafted as well. So just as a little bonus tip, if for whatever reason you say, you know what, this is a waystone tier 1, but there's absolutely no modifiers, guess what you could do to it? You could actually upgrade it to now a magic quality waystone that now has 59% increased amount of magic chests. So there you go. We now have a good affix that's going to benefit us. And then you can say, you know what, let's try it again. Let's see if we can get a second modifier and see if it's good. Players are cursed with enfeeble. So just remember that you always typically have a prefix which is going to benefit you and then suffixes which are going to hurt you. So in this instance, we're going to be cursed with enfeeble, but you could then continue doing the same cycle we did earlier, now changing it from a magic item to a rare quality item with a Regal Orb, and continue modifying it if you said, you know what, this is great. We can actually have something we can work with here. So just kind of just a little bonus, you can do this crafting with weapons, gear, and also waystones. There are ways to craft other items, and I am going to show you how to do that in terms of, you know, obviously the gems that we're going to be talking about later, the flasks as well. But one other thing that I did want to mention is that, as with anything else, the other items that you can equip, like your accessories, like rings, this can happen as well. You can do the same exact thing for a ring and even an amulet. You can improve the quality. You can also improve the rarity and increase the number of modifiers. So anything you can do with when you're crafting a weapon or armor can also be applied to any accessory, which would be your belts, your rings, and your amulets. And you can also even extend that to waystones. So that's just something that I want you to get comfortable doing, because you're going to have lots of currency that you collect along the way, so much so that it's actually almost terrible to bypass the opportunity to do it and just go straight to the trade shop or whatever. You can always also, if you're struggling and say, for example, you can't find any base weapons, you can always look at the vendors in any of the hubs, and you can always say, hey, you know what, I think I could work with this particular item here. They're always going to have, one vendor will have martial weapons, whereas the other will have more spell-based weapons. So you can always consider using them as base weapons so you can begin your crafting as well. But anyways, I hope that was a helpful guide. We're going to be talking about even more, you know, Path of Exile 2 tips, including primarily the corruption system, gems, and socketing gems, and how to make, you know, the most optimal tiers for those and improve your damage and everything else. And aside from that, I will also probably be going over some basic, like, you know, kind of tips that just in general help you in end game, and maybe even the league mechanics if that's what you guys want. But you gotta let me know what you want most, so be sure to do that down in the comments below. I hope you guys enjoyed this video. Thank you all so much for being the best part of my channel, and until next time, it's the Inhuman One signing out.